All right, good morning. Our 9 o'clock presenter is Jennifer Manatt. She's the Assistant Director for the Concrete Industry Management Program at South Dakota State University. She's here today to talk to us about some differences in communication between the 5 generations that we have currently in our workforce, and maybe how we can overcome some of those challenges and maybe embrace some of those differences to move forward stronger than we ever have. So without further ado, let's give Jennifer Manatt a big round of applause.
All right. Good to see everybody this morning. How many people out there actually have multiple generations that they're trying to manage right now? Yeah? How many fingers? Put up how many fingers? 3, 4, 2, what do you think? What do you got? 3, 4. Yeah. It's a real thing. You know, it's interesting that this morning Brian and I were actually talking about different tests, right? Are you an ENTJ? Are you a red? Are you a D and an I, right, for the DISC tests? And there's so many different tests for personalities, right? But then we also have to worry about where do they fall in this huge realm, confusing realm at times, of the different generations. And the reason it's super duper confusing for you guys right now is a lot of different research firms do not agree on the timelines between different generations. So what you're going to find during my presentation is you're going to look and you're say, okay, this time, this date, there are going to be dates that you're going to go, well, I thought that was 1982, or I thought that was 1980, or whatever it is, right? That's because not everybody can even agree. So that makes it super easy on you guys too, because you don't know. So how are you supposed to figure that out, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the generations and the different qualities of those generations, but I'm also going to talk a little bit more on the subconscious levels of this than I am going to talk on what you've heard from everyone else out there. I have training in a thing called regenerating images in memory. And it is a trauma type of training, and it's a modality similar to like EMDR, if anybody knows what that is. But it's also a modality that's like a level up on hypnosis. So there's a lot of subconscious that goes into our daily lives. There's a lot of subconscious that goes into our daily functions. And actually, if you look up studies, the majority of those studies actually agree that your decision making, 95% of all of your decisions are made subconsciously. You don't even know it. And to give you an example of what that looks like is if you're in a conversation with someone and they say something to you that makes you immediately defensive, right? That is your subconscious speaking to you, okay? So through this process, I'm going to talk a little bit about the generations, but I'm also going to talk about the process of the subconscious and how that works in our everyday life and works for each of these different generations that helps them make decisions. The other thing we're going to talk a little bit more about in this session is how they work together and how they can work together, right? Because that's a key piece of getting anything done. So we're going to go for that. I did have a room that was actually the small room for my session, and now I'm in the big room. So I had to kind of change up my approach to how I was going to do this. Generally, I just have, if I'm in a small breakout, I just have people stand up and actually give comments based on their input from their generation. But because I'm in the large room, you can see there are chairs up here and a microphone. So I'm actually going to be inviting the various generations to come up and actually have one person from each generation. Because the other thing I don't like are sweeping generalizations. And I don't like giving information from me and in various places on the internet when I am somewhere where I can actually pull people who are in those age groups and actually get feedback from them real time. That's actually going to be more informative for you than for me to just give you all of the information and presentation and information from the internet. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is do something that not so many people are doing, and that's starting from the middle of my presentation. It's really important to kind of reverse engineer our way into this, right? And so I'm going to ask for audience participation. Do I have anyone in here who was born between 1922 and 1954? Anyone? Okay. Are you willing to come up? Come on up. See, and that's why I'm having her come up, because I can't hear from here. Come on up. All right, 1955 to 1964. Anyone? Want to come up? It's super hard for your coworkers to make fun of you later if you're not up here. 1965 to 1980, who do I have out there? Anybody? I know I saw a bunch of you yesterday. I'm gonna make, yep, come on up. 81 to 96. 81 to 96, yep. Some timid people. Come on up. That's you. And then 97 to 2012. I talked to a couple gals yesterday. Are you in here? They may have specifically not come in just because I said I was going to contact them to come up. 97 to 2012. Anybody? Come on, we got to have a Gen Zer. There it is. You don't, is it like you didn't want to claim your generation? What's going on? So go ahead and sit in order that you see here. So that we're top down. Did we lose somebody? All right. And as you can see, I like to have a little bit of fun with my presentations. If it's going to be boring, I don't want to do it because I don't do boring. And I'm sure you guys don't want to sit through a really boring, dry presentation with a bunch of statistics in it. So the first generation, that silent generation, not going to make any assumptions, right? So, but what people are talking about with the silent generation is that everyone is kind of coming out of parenting from parents of the Depression era, right? I mean, shake your head no if I say anything that you don't agree with. The first absolute recyclers and upcyclers. They would use and reuse anything they absolutely could, right? So you could have a paper sack that your dad took to lunch, to take his lunch in every single day, and he would use that bag until it failed. Yeah. So obviously very conservative upbringing, right? Very conservative with their spending. Yes. You have a microphone. If you talk into the mic.
Yes, very conservative.
Perfect. All right. So in this, what I put down underneath of it is the WTF note. So that kind of represents their era. Is they're just wondering why. Like, just do it, right? Just get it done. What are we sitting around waiting for, right?
Yes.
Yes. So the baby boomers. Hand the mic down to the baby boomer. And it says, I stopped believing for a little while this morning. Journey is going to be so pissed when they find out. And so with this generation, with the boomers, it's very hardworking, dedicated, longevity in your job. There's loyalty to your employer, right? So that's with the baby boomers. You have the Gen Xers, and your thoughts on the Gen Xers.
So Gen Xers are the next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think they have really good motivation skills and willing to take on anything and yeah, I think they're really good. So,
Yeah? Okay. That's pretty good feedback. So go ahead and hand it to the Gen Xer. I'm a Gen Xer too, so we're on the same page here.
All right.
But, you know, it's funny, before the internet, these people would take your order, write down an address, and deliver a pizza to your home in less than 30 minutes by using paper map and some form of mystical land pirate. I mean, we didn't have the technology, right?
I have a watch though.
Yeah, that's it. So for you,
Started out without it, but then we had the opportunity to be blessed with it later, yes.
what's that? I'm sorry.
So we started out without it, but then we had the opportunity to be blessed with it later, so we could appreciate both sides of it, yeah.
Right, absolutely. So we're kind of that technology pioneer, right? We're the ones that kind of came into it while it was coming in, and we adapted and adopted as we went, right? So that's what makes us kind of flexible, don't you think?
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. So when they introduce new things at work as far as technology goes, you're not going, oh, you're not overwhelmed by that. Right? Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So then we go to the millennials. Hand it down to the millennial. Welcome. He's all like a little clench there. Take a deep breath. You're good. There you go. All right.
Listen up.
Yeah, all right. So relax into that. You got this. So in this one, I kind of put this joke down. It's an apprenticeship. Stop telling people that I am being potty trained. So there's a lot of that talk about in this generation that there was more of a movement toward the trades, but also that the other generations tend to make fun of the millennials. And for one reason or another. Do you find that in your experience when you are on the internet, you're looking at memes, working with other people?
I guess I'm not into that stuff. I think I was born in the wrong generation. So I don't know. I mean, when I grew up, I didn't have a lot of those things, you know. Our parents didn't give us those things. So, I mean, we just, you know, we were happy with what we got, you know.
Yeah.
We didn't get a lot of things when we were younger. So.
Yeah. So what's good about this is that he's an exception to the rule, right? And that's a great thing to point out is we can generalize all of the population. We can talk about millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers as if they are all the same. But right here, really good example. He says, my parents didn't give me that stuff, so this is where I'm at and why, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. We grew up on a farm and we didn't have much, so.
Yeah. Did you have something you want to comment? Yeah, feel free. If you guys want to comment on something, take the mic.
I guess like in my case, if I want to find where somewhere is, you know, I'll more than likely look at a map instead of the Google or the.
Even
I'm getting
still.
better that way, but I mean that's.
Yeah, even still now, right? Rand
Right.
McNally is your best friend.
Right.
Yep. I was there too.
I was just going to add too, I think it depends on size of your family and everything else too. I grew up a farm ranch operation as well, and I had older siblings that were boomers, myself, Gen X, and younger siblings that were millennials because there were 8 of us in the family. So you can relate to all the generations, whatever, and it maybe depends on the day and who you're hanging out with. If you assimilate more of the attributes, whatever, from the boomer generation or Gen X, et cetera, whatever. So, yeah, I think it depends a lot on your upbringing too and what the age of the individuals in your family are.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, okay, hand the mic down to that Gen Z guy. Welcome.
Hiya.
So I just kind of put the, Gen Z bingo on there because there are so many different opinions of this generation, right? And you know what they are because you are on social media, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm on social media. Oh, sorry. I'm on social media quite a bit. It's kind of part of our lifestyle, more or less. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you communicate on apps?
Oh, yeah, that's all we do. So, Snapchat, TikTok, name it. It's on my phone, so.
Yeah. And Boomer, let me ask you, are you communicating on apps or? Are you communicating on apps? Right. So text messaging. So do you communicate on Instagram? TikTok? No? Yes? Okay. So as you can see, adaptation and adoption also depends on where you're at on how open you are to things like that, right? And your children and your children's children, right? Your children, your grandchildren, et cetera, also have an influence on that, don't they? Can you hand her the mic, please?
It's my granddaughter. My son is my tech guy, and his daughter has brought me into things like Instagram. And,
Right,
you know.
absolutely. And that's what I love is that, how old is your granddaughter?
16.
16, right? But was she 16 when she started using technology?
No.
Right.
Much younger.
Right, exactly. So that's exactly where we're going. I love that transition that you just helped me make. So going backward here, okay? Here's a silent generation. 12% of people over 75 will participate in the workforce by 2030. This is something that we need to really grab onto, because this is where their identity is wrapped up in. They want to be useful. They feel their personal value is attached to their usefulness. And if they can't be useful and they don't have a purpose, they really struggle. And that's what's interesting about the attachment to their mental health. Their mental health is impacted by their ability to be useful and valued.
Yes.
Okay.
I retired from one job in October and started a new one in November.
That's right. So right there, okay? So this generation is called the traditionalists. The Great Depression and World War II really kind of shaped how you guys were raised, right? And so on this, they want respect for authority. They're very cautious conformers, but they're willing to conform. You can give them direction and say, here's how you're going to fit into this, and they'll adapt to that environment as long as they feel they're being useful and there's respect among everyone, right? Finances, you're going to save your money, and I would rather pay cash, okay? And as far as the bottom one, so PTO doesn't mean paid time off. PTO means piss them off. So on each of my slides, this is what pisses this generation off. I figured I would put something different than what everybody else puts. Here's, I put their values on here, absolutely. But in general, the surveying that I did with my students at SDSU and other people that I know in these generations, here's what pisses them off. Informality, walking up to somebody who is in this generation and not being respectful. So yes, shake their hand. Yes, introduce yourself. Yes, give a few details about yourself. Hi, my name is Jennifer and I'm with SDSU, or I know your granddaughter and we've hung out. They want to associate people with things, and they actually remember the people better, the names better when that happens, and they really like that. Any lack of etiquette. Please do not sit at the break room table and belch out loud. You will absolutely lose their respect. It's disrespectful. Lack of generational respect, which means like if you're going into Walmart or if you're going into any store and you have to hold the door, if you don't hold the door for them, that's just, they'll hold the door for you. They just look at you and say, why are they not respectful, right? And then excessive cursing, F-bombs, etc. is something that really turns them off. What do you think? Anything else that pisses you off that I missed?
Well, I don't think so, but I have, I think, learned new ways of looking at things, I think, through my family and my coworkers.
Yeah?
So I'm kind of always been open to that.
Awesome. I love that. See? Exceptions to every rule. Love it. Can you hand that to the boomer in the room? So, let's see if I can get this to work. So they call them the boomers, right? Baby boomers. Their family is kind of the disintegrating family where everybody's moving or everybody's going all over the place. It's not, no one's like living really close to each other. Sometimes they have to travel in order to see their grandchildren. And their finances were always buy now and pay later. Not necessarily on everything, but especially on things like a car. And that was acceptable, to have a car loan, things like that, right? House loans?
No, I don't.
Pardon?
I don't have any loans.
No, what I mean is like it's acceptable, socially acceptable for you to have a mortgage. It's socially acceptable for you to have a car loan, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So on the boomer side versus the silent generation, many of the silent generation didn't feel like if you didn't have the cash in your bank account, you should not go buy a car. So that's kind of a difference in them. How do you piss them off? Call them old, right? Nobody wants to be called old anyway, right? I mean, none of us want to be called old. And then digital messages instead of calling. If there's an issue, if you send them a book on text or a social media app, they're going to look at that and go, what are you thinking? Can't we just have a conversation about this? Tell me I'm wrong.
No, yes, that's right.
Talking to the mic so they can all hear you.
You're right, yep.
So that right there, that's part of it, that's correct, right? The other piece of it is excessive use of like. Oh, like my mom did this and I did that, and literally she was so upset. Is that something that you're going, why can't you eliminate those words from your vocabulary?
Right, exactly.
Exactly. Selfies. You see the internet, you see everybody taking pictures of themselves, and you're kind of going, why?
Yeah, that's exactly.
What do you think when you see all these pictures of people taking pictures of themselves and posting them?
Well, I guess with all the messaging and all the emails, I often think, well, if somebody had to make a message and send it in the mailbox, there'd be a lot fewer of them. Like we used to.
So those things are all the boomers. Not being informed, if you can't have a conversation about what's currently going on in the news, right? If you aren't knowledgeable and you're not educating yourself about what's happening in your country, if you're not knowledgeable educating yourself about the freedoms that you have and who provided them and how they were provided to you, that gets a little frustrating, doesn't it? Yeah. So these are the things that tick them off. Loud music at coffee shops, also. Like, you go in there and you're like, what do you think about a coffee shop? Are you going to stay there?
Not if it's really loud, but I do like coffee shops.
Yeah?
Just to go and read,
Yeah, but can you hear each other when you're talking if there's loud music?
No.
Right. And you're not there to listen to loud music while you're drinking coffee with friends, right?
Right, no.
Yeah. I always say this is why Casey's is so popular. You see this large group of people in Casey's in this boomer age group, and you see them all just conversing and standing around in front of the coffee area. And it's because they're not playing loud music, and everybody needs to go grab some coffee. They want it to be affordable coffee, although they will go to a coffee shop,
Yeah.
right?
I'm usually the only one that just gets coffee.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of other things you don't know.
Yeah, so you're not spending $8 on a macchiato, frappuccino, whatever.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at here is these Gen Xers. I am one of these. He is one of these, AKA the MTV generation, and also called the latchkey generation. Now me, I'm an exception of the latchkey generation because we never locked our doors, so I never needed a key. But other than that, yes, I was home alone. Were you home alone quite a bit after school? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, actually, because we live so far from town, whatever, we live by ourselves. My sister and I live by ourselves in town, whatever, during the week, where we attended high school, and then we drive home, whatever, to help, of course, on the ranch and everything the weekend. So yeah, we had a lot of freedom that way, whatever, I guess, by ourselves. So.
Yeah, and how old were you?
Freshman in high school, I guess.
Yeah. So I remember being alone for a number of hours when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. Very early on, making food for myself, doing my homework, all of that kind of stuff. So very early on independence, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And did you like that?
Yeah, I guess the freedom of it was nice, whatever. It probably taught you responsibility at an early age, because you had to figure out how to wash clothes and some of that stuff on your own, whatever, when you were quite young. So
Yeah.
you had to
right?
screw a few things up on your own right away out of the gate, whatever, when you were quite young. So.
Right. We were never taught that was not right. We were never taught that it was irregular or that we should be scared to be home alone, were we?
No, so it's definitely interesting looking at my kids versus, even my own generation, whatever. So, but I think in that respect, sometimes there's a lot of things with the boomer generation that I end up relating to as well, just because I guess because of the age and some of the upbringing, whatever, the ranch setting be a little bit different than other people, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Does it make sense to everybody out there? Does that make sense? Get some head nods. They need to put the coffee in here, apparently. So yeah, I mean, our education is a way to get to our idea of success in life. We don't look for education and go, I have to have a 4-year degree. We look at education and go, here's what I want to do, right? And here's how I'm going to get there. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, that was probably the difference I recognized in my family is between my sister and I. We're more the middle children, if you will. We're the first ones to get a 4-year degree. Not that that's anything great or whatever than somebody who doesn't have that, but I just think the opportunity maybe wasn't there for some of the older generation sometimes, whatever. So we had the opportunity to be able to step into that window and get a little more education. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember my uncle working at John Deere and having a conversation with my grandparents to help him finance an associate's degree so he could move from manufacturing over into the white collar area because you had to have a 2-year degree in order to get to where you're going. So he didn't even look at education until he was in his, I think he might have been in his late 40s, right? But it was, again, it was a means to get somewhere, not because he felt it was a necessary part of life, right? So, and on the Gen X side, our finances, we're fairly cautious. We're fairly conservative and we save. And part of that is also, again, you know, we just want to make sure we're going to take care of ourselves because we're like the first generation who finally figured out the government's messaging was no longer, when you retire, you will have Social Security and Social Security will take care of you, right? We're the first generation that started having to adapt to that in our retirement planning because everybody was suddenly saying, this might be gone by the time you get there. So you better save for yourself, right? So we kind of panicked in a way on that one. If you want to piss us off at work, leave us out of the loop. Like, just leave us out of the loop and then come to us and tell us there's a problem that we need to help you solve, and we have no idea what's going on, right?
Yeah, it's a little difficult to solve the problem if you don't know what's going on. So.
Right, but that frustrates us immensely because when we get into this situation, we feel ourselves, if you add more people and you added us to it and we were in the loop, maybe that problem wouldn't have happened, right? Because we have a level of experience. Because, I mean, I'm not saying we're old, but I'm going to say we're old-ish, right? I'm old-ish is what I say to my students. Because I'm young in spirit, right? I believe in that, right? But I'm old-ish in that I have a lot of experience. And so if you're in the younger generation and you're supervising and managing, et cetera, and making decisions, if you're caught and you don't understand or don't know something, keep moving forward and it becomes a panic, right? An emergency and not a situation that you can manage, then that will piss us off, right? And then we don't know what's happening. So then what's funny is our boss comes to us and wants to know what the heck's happening or why it happened, and we then have no answer for them. And we love that, don't we?
Yeah, trying not to come in and fix something after the fact is always a challenge. So.
Right, exactly. So, and then for us, we like things that are well written, well spoken. We want people to get to the point. And then we want the job done well. And we want to be communicated with. So again, if you need more time to to do something, we're fine with that as long as there's a good reason. My dad used to tell me, and this is part of being raised, right? My dad used to tell me there's a difference between reasons and excuses. Does anybody know what the difference is? Do you guys know either of you know what it is? The difference between reasons and excuses is timing. If you tell me 2 weeks from now that you don't know if you're going to be able to meet that deadline, you have good reasons to believe that you might not meet that deadline, those are reasons. If you talk to me the day before or the day of the deadline and you aren't going to make it, all of that is just excuses. And that's how we, as Gen Xers, perceive it in management, is that these are just excuses. And everyone above us, as you can see, he's nodding his head, she's agreement, they agree too. If you have something that you're not going to make work in a certain specific amount of time, it's best to come forward at first and say, hey, I think I might need a longer deadline on this, or what are the critical pieces of this that need to be done, and what could I maybe show up with later, okay? So those are kind of the things on us. And then don't acknowledge our value. If you don't acknowledge our value and our experience and our expertise, that's super frustrating. and we will look for somewhere else to go. Because we're not like in the boomer generation or the silent generation where they have this high level of loyalty where they'll just take it and try and cope with it and deal with it. We will actually look elsewhere because we want to be valued, because our self-esteem is tied to our performance, right?
And I think everybody appreciates being valued, just some of them will probably express more so whatever the need for it or demand it, so to speak, because anybody's going to work harder if they're appreciated and shown that they're valued.
Right. And some of the ways to show appreciation to a Gen Xer is just to leave us alone to do our job, right? Not micromanage us, not be overbearing, right? Because that shows me that you trust me. And we like that. We like to be shown trust.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like the personal autonomy, whatever that, somebody's not micromanaging them, like you said, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't like formality, and we don't like authority asserted over us. Now, I don't mean that you can't, as a boss, or, I always say boss. I don't like that terminology, but as a boss, if you want to be our boss, then we're probably going to have issues. If you want to be our manager, if you want to be our leader, we're all in. But there's definitely a difference between the two, and if you understand that difference, you're going to do really well with a Gen Xer. Don't you think so? Yeah. Okay. Millennials, aka Gen Y, or the me generation. How do you feel about that?
I guess some are, I guess. I don't know. I don't believe that I am, I guess, but.
So this are the nicknames that they're giving these generations, right? And they view their education as an incredible expense. The millennials are super challenged because this is the generation where they were told, you gotta get a 4-year degree. Most people were telling their kids, look, I didn't get one. I only took what I needed in order to get where I wanted to go, but I'd really like you to be the first one to go to college. But at the same time, they're taking on all this debt to do it. And so their core values, they want to be fulfilled by their work. If I'm going to look at a bill every month, a student loan that I'm going to pay off, I want to feel connected and fulfilled by my work. Do you feel that that's an accurate statement?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. And so the communication, they like the internet. They like smartphone. They like email. They're also good at communicating with apps and, social media as far as like posting and communicating on social media. Do you do that?
I would say rarely, I guess.
Rarely?
I would probably look at it more, but I don't really, post anything or anything like that, so.
Perfect. Awesome, I love that. So what pisses them off, right? Jokes about them living at home. You don't live at home, do you?
No.
Right. Forced generational failed politics on them. What do you think about that?
What was that?
Forcing generational politics on you. So meaning your parents, grandparents, etc. are talking politics in the same room with you and they think you should believe everything that they believe. What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, maybe, I guess.
Does it bother you?
Does it bother me?
You want to have your own opinion?
Oh, I got my own opinion, so I don't need too many people. So.
I'm seeing the person that you were sitting by out there laughing, so it sounds like that. And then call their music crappy. Has anybody ever called your music crappy?
I probably listen to more of what my parents listen to, so it's probably more of the old-fashioned music,
So do you call their music crappy?
The stuff that's on the radio nowadays? No. I like the older music and stuff like that. I enjoy that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So then also, they don't like to be referred to as millennials or Gen Y. They just don't like the label. And I completely get that too, as far as, being labeled. Nobody likes it. That's what I was talking about earlier, taking all these, personality assessments and whatever. It's like you'll walk around and you'll share your DISC results. You'll share what colors you are and those types of things. But in this area, it's a lot more sensitive. It's a lot more sensitive because it has to do with your age and it has to do with your values and and there's all these things that it's very, very exposed and very, very generalized. And I can completely understand why they don't like it. And then they don't like being called lazy, like they're unwilling to work. They don't like being called narcissistic and entitled. Would you like to be called any of those things?
No, I believe not.
No, right? Because those aren't motivation. You know, those aren't going to motivate anyone, right? And in the millennial group, there are a lot of, there's just this tinge of kind of a defiance brain on the subconscious level. And what I mean by that is that if someone tells them to do it, points and tells them to do it, even if they were going to go do it, they now almost can't do it. Or they can't really do it to the level that they would have done it if they just would have been asked. Do you find that to be true with you?
I guess I still probably respect people that are in charge, you know? So I wouldn't think that, you know, if it's part of my job that I have to do it, I guess if it needs to be done, it's going to get done, you know? But it's not to the point where, you know, I mean, I suppose if somebody says it, you know, maybe snippy or something like that where I might not like it, but other than that, I mean, I would see no problem with that, so. I mean, if it's part of my job, so.
Well, let me ask you this. If your manager asks you to do something, do you see it as something optional, or do you see it as they want you to do that?
I would say it has to be done, you know? I mean, that'd be my point of view.
Right. So that's how you interpret it, is they probably want you to do that.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's kind of the difference is if you ask them to do something, they're going to translate it as they want you to do it. So it's so much easier if you're managing a millennial to just ask them to do it. Instead of you need to, you should have, any of those types of words. I always say we should all over ourselves. And that's exactly what millennials don't like, that the shoulding needs to stop and the questions need to start. So that's kind of where they're at. Gen Z, here we go. I have a feeling this is going to be a good one. So y'all have a lot of nicknames.
Yeah.
Like the Zoomers, right? I generation, post millennials, global generation, loneliest generation. Do you feel that when I say that?
I personally don't feel like loneliest, but I can see some people in my generation, feel that way.
Right, yeah. What makes them lonely?
I guess I don't know, because I don't have that personal experience, but I can see it.
So the statistics that explain that, the loneliest generation, is that how they relate to other people is through technology. And what that means is on the subconscious level, they're not fulfilled with relationship. And because they're the generation that's basically just had all of this social media. They are digital natives. They've grown up with technology in their hands, right? They think that this is how you connect on a conscious level. But your subconscious level, everyone's subconscious level, is human connectivity. Human connectivity. And so there have been tests and research that are being done right now that this is something that was done recently, where they took a group of girls, teenage girls, and a group of another group of teenage girls, and they had them text their moms, okay, in this group. And over here they had them FaceTime their moms, okay? And they had them do that 2 times a day for over a period of time. And on this group, their level of anxiety, their level of loneliness, their level of positivity around the world and what's happening in their world and their life in general was significantly lower than the ones that just FaceTime with their moms twice a day. So we don't realize it on a conscious level how much we need that human interaction and that connectivity. But we're starting to realize it, right? We're starting to realize it. And that's why a lot of times we refer to your generation as being lonely. Because how you guys are connecting and how you were basically taught to connect isn't fulfilling you on a subconscious level. So On the core values, they like diversity. They're the most diverse generation. Their purchasing decisions are expressions of their values. If you and your company do something that impacts the world in a very negative way, this group will boycott your product. Agree?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Have there been any products or companies, and you don't have to name the companies, but have there been any products or companies that you have boycotted because of a social violation? It could be social, environmental, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, yeah, there's been a few where I'm just like, I'm not going to purchase from them if that's going to be the decision that they make, but I understand it's their company, they want to run it that way, but then they're just not going to get my money.
Right. Yeah. So this generation sees their dollars, their money, as a vote. And if I'm not going to vote for you, I'm not going to vote for your company's success, I'm not going to support what you're doing if I don't agree socially or economically or environmentally or whatever it is with your organization or your group. It's just not something I'm going to do. I'm going to vote with my money and my time and my resources. Would that be accurate?
Yep.
Okay. So they strive for independence, but they're still somewhat reliant because of their age group. We've changed a lot of policies and procedures over the years. I remember when I was getting out of college as a Gen Xer, I got the letter from my parents' employer directly sent to me saying, in a month you will no longer have any health insurance. So it basically said, get a job, right? And whereas now, we realized a while back that we can't just cut children off and have them not have any insurance, right? And so that actually creates a little bit more connectivity in the family and a little bit more reliance, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say I'm fairly reliant on some of my parents to be able to help us out. I know that they're willing to and everything. When I was looking for a job, health insurance was definitely one of the things I wanted to make sure that I had because I knew eventually that it goes away and that's something you need. So, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And so on the communication, again, the digital natives, social media, text, don't call me generation. If I call you, tell me what you're going to do. If I call you.
I'm going to stare at my phone like this until it goes to voicemail.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to do. And it's interesting because as a Gen Xer, that if you didn't understand that, you just keep calling him. He's just going to keep looking at his phone. And you're going to be upset because he's not answering his phone. Why have a phone? I mean, how many times have I said this? Why have a phone if you're not going to answer it, right? She has a comment. Do you want to pass the mic down to her?
That's one of my big pet peeves, and I've tried to teach my children, it's a social obligation. You answer the phone when it rings. I understand that today we have our phones with us, and we didn't when I was growing up, but when I started out, we had a party line, and most of you probably don't even know what that is, but we shared phone lines with our neighbors, so you'd pick up the phone to make a call, and you'd hear somebody else having a conversation. Mm-hmm. That telephone was a tremendous thing in our lives, and when it rang, man, you were excited and you answered it. And now I have trouble getting my kids to answer my calls, so yeah, I'm trying to say, hey, guys.
Isn't there a Doris Day movie with Rock Hudson that they have a party line issue?
Yes.
Yeah. What is that movie called?
Oh gosh.
Do you remember?
I don't remember what it was.
I
saw it though.
We'll remember it eventually. It's a really good movie. I love that movie. I'm kind of like the Turner Network person, though. I watch that and do laundry. So, as she's saying, it's a social obligation on this end of this group, right? And on that end of the group, it's like a social pet peeve on your end, right? It's like, don't call me. Can't you just send me a message, right? I mean, and for Gen Xers, we're like that with meetings. Like, this smells like it could have been an email, not a meeting, right? So the next one here, we got Alpha Generation that's going to be coming up. There's some information on them. This is a very young group, but again, these are the best, this is going to be the best educated generation. They will be well traveled at an early age because, guess why? Because they're being educated, raised, and influenced by every generation before them. So let me explain something to you when I said subconscious. Subconscious is the thing that you don't think. She was raised by a Depression-era parents, right? They adapted and adapted their circumstances and executed in ways that they needed to execute in order to have their family survive. This is survival. When she got older, she was expected to graduate, right, or from high school, and that could be 8th grade or high school, okay, and take care of herself. There was no coming to mom and dad. They didn't have the money to be giving her. They taught her how to live on her own and send her on her way, okay? Here, this person, this generation, right, raised this generation. And as you can see, it's cascading down. And this generation is the way that they are, with all of the things we talked about with the boomers, because of how they were raised, and then the generational things that happened prior to them that created the trauma, subconsciously, for them to respond in the way they did to raise this generation the way they were raised, okay? Same thing here. The boomers raised the Gen Xers. They were busy working. They needed to create a life for their families. And they had seen how they were raised, and they wanted better for their life. They wanted better for their children. And so they gave their children better, okay? They didn't give anything to them, trust me, we had to earn it. But they gave us the skills, and they gave us the motivation, okay, to do and be who we are. And the Gen Xers, based on some of the traumas that were handed down generation to generation, we raised this generation differently. Giving them access to computers, giving them access to things we didn't have access to, and upgrading their life, right? And so now they have a really decent life. They have a standard of living that's better than this. This is a standard of living better than this, and this. See where this is going? And so now you get over here to the Gen Zers. And because they're being raised and influenced by this generation, managed by this generation is the way that they are because of all of this cascading, subconscious trauma, events, the historical events. I mean, we talk about the blowing up the Challenger, right? We talk about the death of John F. Kennedy. We talk about, right? We talk about a lot of these things, 9/11, that all influences each of those generations as well. And we get down here and we say, oh, they're lazy, they're this, they're that. I've got news for you. This. You all have influenced all the way down to Gen Z, depending on which generation that you're in. You cannot blame any generation below you because they are raised by your generation. There's no blame to be had. All there is for us to basically come together and say, we're all in this together. We all have to live together. We all have to work together. What happens to one of us is going to happen to all of us. So we're either raised by them or are raising them, and there are more generations to come like the alphas. No one wants to be unhappy, feel disrespected, taken advantage of or for granted, get paid less than what is fair, or be lorded over, or treated like a mushroom and not let into the situation that they're being involved in. And I feel like if everybody just comes together, this quote makes a lot of sense. All we have is knowledge passed on to us by our elders, experiences we inculcate and hardly negate. But to bridge the generational gap, one needs to adapt to the new while retaining the goodness of the old. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Acceptance, grace, and questions are just the best way to manage to begin with. Don't make assumptions because we have standouts, right? And it all depends on how they're raised, not just what generation they're in. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thanks the panel. Give the panel a round of applause for being so brave. Really appreciate you guys coming up. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it.